From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The lower house in Haiti has voted to remove the Prime Minister Jean-Henri Ceant. This comes just 6 months after Ceant took office in the midst of a persistent economic and political crisis. 93 members of parliament voted in favor of the motion to sack Ceant, while 6 voted against and 3 abstained. The Prime Minister did not attend to the vote. He had expected to face a vote of no confidence in the Senate, but there was no quorum. The president of Mozambique, Filipe Nyusi, fears that cyclone Idai death toll could exceed the 1,000 victims. South Africa has announced it is sending troops to help with recovery efforts. The tropical storm has damaged 90% of the southern city of Beira, the most polluted in the country after the capital Maputo. Rescuers in Beira have evacuated people from the port city devastated by the cyclone. A dam burst on Sunday, cutting off the last road remaining to the city of about 100,000 people. According to the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Federation, at least 160 people died in Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, and also South Africa. Meanwhile, rescue workers have started a search for survivors of the devastating cyclone. The official death toll in Mozambique still stands at 84, but according to authorities, more than 100,000 people are still in danger.
Flying sheets of metal, decapitated people. Some people are in hospital. It's really bad. No one is rescuing us here. We don't eat properly, we don't sleep properly, we have no home.
The biggest threat we have now, even bigger than the cyclone, is floods, because it's raining more and more, and the hydrographical basins are increasing their level. And here we are in the lower part of the province, which means all the water comes this side.
A group of Zimbabwean school children from Chimanimani have been rescued after being stranded for 2 days in the aftermath of cyclone Idai. Following the heavy storms, roads and bridges were destroyed, leaving school children stranded and trapped by floods. Searchers and rescue operations are still ongoing. The government has said 100 people have been killed in Zimbabwe by cyclone Idai. 217 have been reported missing, while 102 were injured. Roads have been destroyed and communications disrupted. Rescuers were struggling to reach people in Chimanimani, many of whom have been sleeping in the mountains since Friday after their homes were destroyed by rockfalls and mudslides. Our correspondent Matuba Malachi has the latest.
Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi says the death toll from Cyclone Idai could be as high as 1,000. He spoke on state radio on Monday afternoon after he flew by the helicopter over the Indian Ocean port city of Beira and the rural Manica and Sofala provinces, where he reported widespread devastation. Now, at the same time, President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa says he has deployed the South African National Defence Force to Mozambique to assist with recovery efforts. Cyclone Idai's trail of destruction has also affected South Africa in a big way. It has caused severe damage, knocking down pylons and affecting power supply here in South Africa, which has had major repercussions. And those power outages have had serious economic losses for many businesses here in the country, as they cannot operate without power. But at this stage, all eyes are on the death toll that's expected to rise sharply as recovery efforts continue in Mozambique. It's back to you, studio.
We thank Matuba for that report. Moving on, indigenous people have blocked a major highway in Colombia after a week of anti-government protests. Protesters are demanding a meeting with President Iván Duque as they say the government breached the agreement regarding their lands. They also reject violence against leaders of their communities. Over the weekend, police repressed their social assemblies.
It is worrying that the national government does not show a gesture of willingness to meet with farmers. and we are concerned about the fact that there might be a stronger confrontation than what we have had these past few days.
Our correspondent in Colombia, Tatiana Portela, has more details.
A protest known as Minga, promoted by indigenous communities, Afro-descendant people, and campesinos, have been taking place for a week in the Cauca department in the south of the country. Protesters have several requests for President Iván Duque. 4 months ago, both parties started negotiations to make agreements related to the property of lands by indigenous communities. But so far, the government has not fulfilled any of the proposals made in those negotiations, so the indigenous communities started their protests. A previous rally was heavily repressed by the riot police. A helicopter reportedly overflew the area and threw flares, something that is banned by international law. Protesters demanded that President Iván Duque visits the area and meets with indigenous, campesino, and Afro-descendant leaders. The goal is to restart the talks. In that meeting, they will ask the president to include a special section about indigenous communities in the National Development Plan, which includes all the government's policies in Colombia. They also ask for the respect of the peace agreements with the FARC. On Monday evening, a mobilization is expected in support of the peace agreements.
That was Tatiana from Bogota. Dutch police say they've arrested the man suspecting of gunning down 3 people and wounding 5 on a tram in the city of Utrecht. The suspect has been identified as 37-year-old Gokmin Tanis. Police said they were investigating a possible terrorist motive behind the attack. Authorities have strengthened surveillance at borders, public transportation station, and major highways. Local media has reported that a witness saw a woman lying on the ground as several men ran away from the scene. Prime Minister Mark Rutte convened crisis talks, saying he was deeply concerned about the incident.
The moment we got the reports, we broke off coalition consultations, and then I went back to the office to get myself up to speed. We are going to investigate the motives very thoroughly, but I'm very concerned.
And the government has raised the terrorism threat level to the highest possible in the province of Utrecht. Security was increased at schools, mosques, airports, and other transportation hubs.
In Utrecht een schietpartij plaatsgevonden op verschillende locaties.
The death toll for floods in Indonesia has risen to 79 people. More than 4,000 have been displaced and dozens are injured and still missing. The disaster was triggered by torrential rain and landslides and has mostly affected the easternmost province of Papua. The evacuation process is still taking place with affected areas that haven't been reached yet. Those displaced are being sheltered in 6 evacuation centers. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome. A journalist has been killed in the south of Honduras. 54-year-old Gabriel Hernandez was reportedly shot on the street as he was heading back home. Hernandez was known for his critical reports against the local government and had asked for protection after several threats, but it was denied. According to the National Committee of Human Rights, 75 journalists were killed in Honduras between 2001 and 2018. Our correspondent Gilda Silvestrucci brings us the details.
A journalist from the south of the country, Gabriel Hernandez, was killed this Sunday. The motive for this murder is yet to be clarified, but he had already reported some threats. He was doing some journalistic investigations related to corruption in the council hall of municipality of Valle, the city where he was murdered. Hernandez used to point out the corruption of these authorities as well as from some lawmakers in the area. Over 70 journalists have been killed since 2001, with an impunity rate that reaches 92%. So far, authorities have not given any detail or explanation. Only the National Commission for Human Rights has urged the authorities to investigate the murder of Gabriel Hernandez.
Following the countrywide power outage last week, Venezuelan authorities are making sure all services are protected and working properly, including water. The Venezuelan Minister of Water, Evelyn Vázquez, visited a treatment plant outside Caracas.
The armed forces are deployed all around the country Today, we are visiting the water treatment plant called La Guairita to verify that water purification procedures work perfectly. The armed forces are also deployed here to secure the plant against possible opposition attacks. We have 100% of water pumps resettled, coming after 4 days of a very hard situation due to the criminal attack on our power grid. We are still recovering. We achieved 80% of recovery on average. In some places, we already achieved 100%.
Farmers in the Dominican Republic have been greatly affected by the worst drought to hit the nation in 30 years. According to farmer unions, over 7,000 heads of cattle have died and many remain vulnerable due to the water scarcity. The drought has been affecting the country since late 2018, with predictions saying conditions won't improve until May. A financial assistance package has been launched, so farmers can receive some compensation for their losses.
We have no water. The wells have dried up. There is only one river in our province that still flows. That's the Guayubín River. The Yaguajay River has dried up. The Cana River has dried up. The Bellaco River has dried up. The Gurabo is dry. The Maguana is dry. The Clavijo is dry. All rivers are dry. We only have one river with flowing water, and because it's far away, it's impossible to take all the cattle there.
A high concentration of Saharan dust blanketing Trinidad and Tobago has reduced air quality to unhealthy levels. Authorities have warned of increased aggravation of heart or lung disease and possible premature death in persons with heart disease. Sand and dust from the Sahara Desert of North Africa is swept up in air currents and pushed over the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico and other nearby regions. For decades in Mexico City, dumpster diving and scavenging for food on the streets has been a means of survival for hundreds of people. However, the government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador aims to change the situation with a series of welfare programs.
In search of food, people like Josefina Cardenas shift through piles of garbage, something she has been doing every day for the last 3 decades.
My children taught me how to do it after they started looking through shop's garbage. They were small, but they told me one day that, Mom, let's go to the city center because we'll find good stuff there.
Scavenging can be done at any dumpster in the city at any time.
I do this in order to survive, because I don't have any other form of income. I find many things, so I'm more or less able to provide for my family.
For some, like Martha, who is a seamstress, the food she finds in these dumpsters makes up the basis of her family's sustenance.
My son's street work paid very little, and it's just not enough for me to get by. I have to come and look for vegetables that I can take home to feed my family with.
Just how many people have come here from other towns to scavenge? There are so many people in need.
Dumpster diving and scavenging for food have become so common that there are even associations of scavengers at large sites like Mexico City's main wholesale market, the Central de Abasto. In this metropolitan city that never sleeps, scavengers also work 365 days a year, some finding food for their own consumption, while others try to sell what they come across. These people have never received the resources that several governments promised to allocate for them in order to fight poverty. It was even revealed that the administration of former President Enrique Peña Nieto cheated away most of the funds in what's known as the master scam.
In the name of fight against hunger, they supposedly allocated funds to distribute food and promote certain events. But for this, the hiring was done through the series of ghost companies created by university in the states of Mexico and Morelos.
The new government of Andrés Manuel López Obrador has also promised to combat social inequality, poverty, and the marginalization of society through comprehensive welfare programs, some of which have already been implemented.
Argentina's Football Association has announced the launch of a professional women's football league. 16 teams will participate in the league, which will begin in June. The league will receive $600,000 US each year to be spent on players' salaries. Women's basic salaries in the first division will equal male players in Division 4. Argentina is the second country in Latin America after Colombia to sponsor female football in a professional category.
After working hard, the Argentine Football Association will also have a female tournament. It will be one of the first women's federations around the world, where the players will be at the professional level.
It's always been a dream to give more importance to women's football, that it start being professional. Even if we can't maintain this, the financial support will help a lot.
A rural school in El Salvador is keeping children away from violence thanks to fencing. Students practice their lunges and plunges on the top of a hilltop in the center of the country to avoid gang violence, which still prevails in the rural areas. Around 30 children, mostly from poor families, are part of the group. Coaches say children are also improving their school grades. Peruvian indigenous filmmakers are releasing a short film focused on women's rights in the indigenous community of Vilcashuamán. Alarming rates of gender violence have been reported in this area of the country.
Maribel is one of the main characters in this short film. In the movie, she speaks about her life in Vilcashuamán, a community located in the Ayacucho region, in the Andes, where girls do not have the right to education. They cannot choose their husbands either. Their families pick for them. Once they get married, they are often victims of physical and psychological abuse.
There is a lot of machismo. Women are marginalized. Men do not value women's work. And authorities, neither do they. They do not care. They only care about rich people. When we go to report what happens to us or we file a complaint, they do not pay attention and tell us to leave.
The short film is called Manaika Mana Chincacmi, that in Quechua means pain does not go away. It was shot by young indigenous filmmakers with the collaboration of the Federation of Vilcashuamán Indigenous Women. Their goal was to make visible the violence indigenous women suffer.
We want people to think about this so they can change their minds. We want women to have the same rights.
How would you like the world for women in your community to be?
I want my community to be happy and free of violence.
They want to see their community change, to have a life different from the ones their mothers had. They want to achieve equal rights and freedom, as well as a world without violence. The rate of gender violence in the Ayacucho region is alarming. 51 femicides have been reported in the last year. 4,125 women reported being victims of physical, psychological, and sexual violence in 2018.
Statistics sometimes don't take into account all different types of violence. As indigenous women, we suffered more discrimination due to our language and how we look. We also suffer discrimination because we don't speak very good Spanish. So there are different issues we have to face.
This short film will be released in the Vilcashuamán community and will also premiere in different film festivals in Peru and around the world.
We'll take a short break now, don't go away. Welcome back. The Indian Ocean island of Comoros is gearing up for presidential elections scheduled for May 24th. The ruling party candidate is tipped to beat the 12 candidates that are vying for the presidency. Opposition parties have, however, accused the ruling party of scheming to rig the polls. Elections will be held under a new constitution, which was adopted in a 2018 referendum that was boycotted by the opposition. It allows the president to hold 2 5-year mandates instead of 1. Joyce Banda has withdrawn from the 2019 presidential race in Malawi. Banda has instead opted to endorse fellow opposition leader Lazarus Chakwera, who heads the Malawi Congress Party. Malawi will be heading to the polls in May to choose a new president and members of parliament. Banda was Malawi's first female president in 2012.
I would like seek to therefore confirm and affirm the position that I have withdrawn my candidature and gladly and positively endorsed the candidature of Dr. Lazarus Chakwera.
South Africans have been told to brace themselves for continued blackouts by utility company Eskom. Eskom said it's working with technicians in Mozambique to restore power supply through the 2 power lines that went offline, cutting 1,000 megawatts of water from the grid. According to officials, the way forward is getting a reliable supplier to maintain the existing coal. The World Food Programme has suspended the distribution of super cereal in Uganda after dozens of people fell sick in Karamoja region. Since Friday, dozens of people have been hospitalized complaining of stomach aches, fever, and showing signs of confusion. Government and the UN agency are still investigating whether the outbreak is linked to the cereal. The cereal was applied to both Ugandan and refugee communities. Military chiefs from Syria, Iran, and Iraq are meeting in Damascus to discuss security issues in the region and the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Syria. Our correspondent Hisham Wanous has the details.
A tripartite military meeting is taking place in Damascus between Syria, Iran and Iraq, aimed at discussing security issues in the Tehran-Damascus routes for road transportation and how to safeguard the Syrian-Iraqi border and open 2 crossings of Al-Walid and Al-Qaim. The summit is taking place just ahead of military operations scheduled for late in April to target the forces that are occupying the province of Idlib. The withdrawal of U.S. troops from the country has been one of the main topics of debate, especially since Syria, Iraq, and Iran say that the U.S. and its allies entered into Syria with the excuse of fighting the Islamic State group, but they say that what the U.S. are really doing is extending the conflict in Syria. The UN Special Envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, is also visiting the country for 3 days to discuss with authorities the best way to find a political solution to the conflict.
We thank Hisham for that report. With less than 2 weeks to go until the United Kingdom is due to leave the European Union, the Prime Minister's Brexit plans have suffered yet another reverse. The Speaker of the House of Commons has ruled that Theresa May cannot bring her agreement with the EU back for a 3rd vote, unless she changes the proposal first. Last week, the House voted to request a delay to Brexit. May hoped she might force through her deal this week and so avoid a delay of more than 3 months. Members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and allied oil producers are meeting in Azerbaijan. They're discussing plans to strengthen an alliance that has helped control oil prices. OPEC and Russia agreed in 2016 to create a loose alliance of 24 oil-producing nations to limit production in the face of falling prices. Their production cuts increased prices from around $40 per barrel in 2016 to an average of $70 per barrel last year.
Even in shale oil.
A dengue outbreak has hit the Philippines with more than 40,000 cases reported since the beginning of the year. Authorities say the situation may get worse due to water cuts the capital is suffering because of a severe drought. People storing water for long periods of time is what makes the mosquito reproduce easily. Dengue is a virus transmitted to humans through a mosquito bite. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.